And we are back on another exciting episode of Starfleet Boy, where we have a casual and informal discussion about Star Trek. And today's casual and informal discussion is about Star Trek Discovery's third episode, Context is for Kings. Is context truly for kings, Doctor?
I just watched it.
I know.
And I didn't watch the second episode.
I know.
So it's interesting. It's an interesting experience.
Well, you saw the little here's what happened last time on Star Trek Discovery, right?
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
that's fine.
I encourage you to go back and watch the second episode just because there's
Sure.
a few things that are delightful. But
All right, sure, why not?
So I guess we can jump right into the episode summary. I'll give it this time since this is your first time on our Discovery discussions. It's 6 months after the Battle of the Binary Stars, which takes place on my birthday, by the way, in the future. And I'm very proud of the fact that there's a war. There's a war that starts on. What's going on with?
I have no figures for Discovery, so I'm using substitute figures.
Who are those guys?
These are very unusual figures, and there are many unusual things
in
on the show.
Discovery, it's true.
So, and he kind of, I don't know, there's something about him that reminds me of
Saru.
Saru, yeah. So they're called Power Lords. They have no relation whatsoever.
Can I see the other Power Lord? Because it's blocked by my...
Oh, okay. Well, he's right over here. His name is Raygoth. And these were actually designed by a noted sci-fi artist whose name I've forgotten. I normally know his name, but I can't remember right now.
Wonders never cease. Okay, so
this is my Saru stand-in right here. His name is Sidot.
Nice. It's interesting. It is kind of a weird, uncanny Saru-ish.
Saru-ish.
Speaking of action figures, McFarlane Toys is licensed, I think, to make the Discovery one. So I'm actually really excited about that because I know that they're very high quality toys.
I would like a Saru figure.
Yeah, he's pretty cool, isn't he?
Yeah.
So 6 months after the Battle of the Binary Stars, we have our protagonist or antagonist. She might be an antagonist. Michael Burnham on a shuttlecraft headed for a dilithium mine where there was recently some kind of accident which wiped out the prisoner miners, and now they're sending a new batch of prisoner miners to go there. So this must be like the Rura Penthe of Starfleet. On the way to the mining operation, they encounter some kind of strange looking particle-like bugs or creatures or species, which she names, I forget the name. It's like species 7,649 or whatever.
Yeah.
And their shuttlecraft pilot then has to go out and apparently scrape them off the hull before it's too late. And there's an accident. She gets thrown off the shuttle. But then just as the shuttle's about to, encounter some kind of problem, we are introduced to our namesake of the show, the U.S.S. Discovery, which tractor beams the shuttle in, and then we meet our first person that we meet on board the Discovery is the chief security officer. Was it Lieutenant Landry or Commander? No, I don't know if it's Commander, but I forget her rank already. But it's
Commander. Yeah,
one of the original 5 Cylons from Battlestar Galactica, played by Rekha Sharma. So that was kind of
which adds to the Battlestar Galactica vibe very much.
Which I've been saying that there is a vibe there. Anyways, we then go to a scene where Burnham. Whoa! Do you hear that? Oh, there's some disturbance. There's a disturbance.
Burnham.
So, anyways, Burnham is is challenged by the other prisoners because apparently she's the only mutineer ever in the history of Starfleet. So, previous to Burnham, no one has ever committed mutiny in Starfleet. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, you remember that episode where where Kirk goes to this prison planet, and there's that captain who he admires very much, but he's gone insane.
Oh,
Didn't he rebel against Starfleet?
I don't know. I don't remember. But this is like
Well,
10.
while you tell the story, I'll look
But
it
this
up
is
on
10 years before Kirk, so maybe.
Well, but he's from
Oh,
he's before Kirk.
so the mutiny. Okay, so you
Yeah,
got to look
yeah.
that up. But I
I'll
also
look it up while
heard
you yeah.
I also heard another reference where apparently Spock mentions that there has never been a recorded mutiny in the history of Starfleet. So
Really?
yeah,
Spock says this?
Spock says this apparently. So I don't know which one,
Oh,
which
indeed.
source is true, but this is more evidence that suggests that we are not in, despite what the what what the CBS and everyone else says, we are not in the prime timeline here. We're in the rabbit hole to keep going
The
on
Alice in
the
Wonderland
Alice in Wonderland references.
going.
Which,
Right.
by the way, in the first episode, I pointed this out in my discussion with Gary about it. We do start off going down the rabbit hole, so to speak, in that like weird cloudy nebula thing that turns into Takuvma's eye. So, hey, there could be something to it. Anyways, visually, anyways. So we end up in the mess hall where Burnham is challenged, and then she displays her Vulcan martial arts abilities and quickly dispatches any attempt to hurt her. And so then that's when Landry steps in again, and all of a sudden she's like, the captain wants to meet you. So then we get our introduction of both the Discovery Bridge. At this point, we see Saru at the helm. At the command, at the con.
Well, in command, yes.
In command. And then we go over to the captain's ready room where he has a tribble, a standing desk, and a bowl of fortune cookies. And it seems like that's what he does in his ready room. He eats fortune cookies all day long, which apparently was a family business. He tries nicely to put Burnham to use for the 3 days it's going to take to get these like electric bugs or lightning bugs, as he calls them, off of their shuttle transport, and she declines his request. And then he basically tells her, well, you're a prisoner, you can't really decline my request, you're going to do this whether you like it or not. So then she's assigned to quarters and assigned to a job in engineering. Now her quarters, that in that scene we meet what's to be her temporary quartermate, which is Tilly. And hold on one second, sorry. We're having some kind of a disturbance in the next room. I'm going to see what's going on. It's Burnham.
Do you want me to continue with the summary while you investigate?
Yeah, no, I'm not going to investigate. I'm just
okay. All right.
But I'm wondering what's going on. It's a very curious situation. It lends to investigation. Anyways, Burnham then we meet Tilly, sorry, and then after that we then see her assignment to engineering, and in that scene we meet Lieutenant Stamets, the chief engineer, who's also apparently one of the designers of this prototype drive called the Spore drive, which allows you to apparently travel instantaneously to any point in the galaxy or the universe and back to where you came from within just a few seconds. We also learn at this point that there's another ship called the Glenn, which is just like the Discovery. It's her sister ship, and apparently it's more advanced in its utilization of this spore drive, or more successful with its tests. And so it's kind of all very mysterious and very Philadelphia Project-ish here.
There we go. It's a good reference to Philadelphia Experiment.
We see our first black alert and all kinds of interesting, weird things. Anyways, then shortly after all this is set up, we find out that there's been an accident aboard the Glenn and her crew has been killed. So the Discovery dispatch a boarding party. They can't transport the equipment out of engineering because apparently it's double shielded. So the boarding party, upon coming on board the Glenn, find out that everyone's kind of been somehow distorted and stretched, and it's really gruesome. Actually, very good makeup, special, work there, horror type makeup effects. And then they retrieve then they find out that there's some kind of creature loose on the Glenn, and Klingons that also are on the Glenn that came aboard after her accident while she was adrift, but there's no Klingon mothership anywhere nearby. So that's interesting too. They were just abandoned on the Glenn. Anyways, we'll talk more about that, I guess. But anyways, they try to thwart this creature. They take any equipment that they think might be relevant. They get back to the Discovery, and after that, the captain, Michael, of course, shows her usefulness and her intelligence in quite a few scenes. One is debugging code, and in another one, which is, with this, she basically saves the away team from the creature while making a cool reference to Alice in Wonderland. So when she gets back to the ship, the captain offers her a position on board, and at first she's very suspicious and thinks that the captain is developing some kind of biological weapon, and she's very much against it, and it's against Starfleet ethics. And she says, even though I'm a mutineer and everything before that, I was a Starfleet first officer in Starfleet, and I intend to live and die by the ethics of Starfleet. So then he's like, okay, slow your roll there. Let me take you and show you what's going on. And he reveals the spore drive and what it's capable of to her. And she's, of course, astonished. The scientist in her is very intrigued. And she then agrees. She takes the fortune cookie that was offered to her before, and she agrees to stay on the Discovery. And Saru, we have a scene with Saru sitting in the mess hall, having his tea, and suddenly his threat ganglia pop out as the shuttle's warping away, and then we end with Burnham and Tilly, and Burnham saying she's going to stay aboard and giving Tilly Alice in Wonderland and a nice little reference to Amanda, Spock's mother. I think I got it right. Is that the whole episode?
And there's the ending coda with the Island of Dr. Moreau sequence where he's got
they're calling it I think on the internet they're calling it the Lorca's Menagerie. So yes,
okay.
Yeah, it's true. That is very Island of Dr. Moreau kind of. Yeah. So yeah, we end with Lorca, Tagna Landry, who procured the little beastie, and it's now in his menagerie there for him to experiment on. Yes, so you're right. That's how it actually ends.
Mm-hmm. A very kind of it was a very dark, note to end the
episode on. It gets more interesting. I'm glad you're on board. We won't say, unfortunately, we can't say how you've received the signal, but somehow through subspace, you magically were able to finally watch Star Trek Discovery.
No comments there.
All right. Well, what did you think? Let's get right into it.
Well, actually, I want to read something to you, which I found while you were giving a rather excellent summary there.
Thanks. I
Thank you
don't
very
know about
much.
that.
No, excellent. Excellent is, with Next Generation, you've had years to perfect these summaries, but you're doing these on the spot, obviously. So,
More or less. We're a
yes,
little behind. We have to catch up. We got three more
no,
episodes,
you
two
did
more
a great
episodes
job.
after this. Thank you.
You capture the nuances very well. So I looked up Mutiny, and this is a book that I've never used on the show. This is the Star Trek Encyclopedia.
Oh, nice. Is that Denise and Michael Okuda, right?
These are the Okudas.
Yes.
And this is the last update before.
You know what's funny? I
believe.
have like the first update, the very first issue, so mine is really behind. But anyways.
Well, according to the book, there was it says here the mutiny is the criminal act of willful disobeying lawful military authority. By the 23rd and 24th centuries, mutiny aboard starships was unthinkable. Now, this is the 23rd century? Yes? Am I correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Nonetheless, an investigation found that, this is the Next Generation, that the Pegasus in 2359, there was a mutiny.
Well, we can't.
They also mentioned, this is the guy I was trying to remember, Garth. Captain Garth.
Garth of Izar.
Right. The mutiny of the crew of the first starship Defiant. So actually there's two mutinies, because there's the mutiny of Garth's crew, and then there's the mutiny of the crew of the first starship Defiant, which is mentioned on the Tholian web.
What year is the Garth of Izar mutiny? Does it mention?
It does not mention, but Garth precedes Kirk, and Kirk studied Garth, and if I'm not mistaken, Garth is at Axanar.
That's right.
So
that's right. Well, I would say that this probably takes place before her mutiny is before Garth's mutiny, if we're gonna have that.
Okay.
Because I think it could happen. You could kind of probably, unless you can give me a year, like a specific year, because I think her mutiny takes place in 2256 or something like that.
I can give you the year right now.
Ooh,
Garth of Izar.
Izar.
You say
Izar, I say Izar.
Historic victory at Axanar in the 2250s. I guess the 2260s is when it happened.
So yeah, so he's apparently because she's 2256. Her mutiny takes place on that May 11th, on my birthday. So she would still hold the position of the first mutineer. What about now? I guess she started the mutinies.
All right.
So Michael Burnham's safe as being the first mutineer.
So we're fact checking you, Discovery.
Yes, we are.
We're fact checking you,
as are so many other fans. I feel like this is going to be the most fact checked show in Star Trek history.
Possibly.
Well, it's now that's because, in a way, I have to say though, the writers and producers have invited this, because you can't set a series where Discovery's set and not invite this level of scrutiny, because there are a lot of hardcore fans that are going to be very interested in seeing how well the show sticks to the known universe. And there's lots of material about, which is wonderful actually, because Star Trek has things like the Encyclopedia and lots of rich material or resources in which you can research these things. Look how quickly you looked all that up. It was like very quick and very easy. So excellent. Great. So anyways, apparently in this war, there's 8,000 plus dead in the first few months of, or first few hours of the war. What did you think? What did you think of the tone? So this is your second episode of Discovery after watching the first one on live television. This one you watched on the small screen. What did you think of the overall tone? Did you like the episode? Were you intrigued? Are you going to watch more? What's your?
Well, I'm going to watch more because we're doing these
These discussions. But even
I've been drafted.
I've used a little known, seldom used Starfleet regulation called the Reserve Activation Clause, and I pulled the Doctor. I need you, Doctor.
I've been drafted.
You have been drafted. Where's your little?
Where's my little? Yeah, I forgot the disco ball.
The disco ball.
Yeah, I got the beard going. You know, I understand now why. You know, they made a lot of the fact that this is the first show to follow the first officer, and I understand now. Although she's not really the first officer.
Well, not anymore.
Was the first officer.
Right, she started out as
right. But I understand why she's this. Why they're not choosing to be very captain centric. It's because obviously the captain he's a bit of a loon. I mean, he's shady. Let's just put it that way. I think they're setting up to be a little shady. He's got a lot of dark designs to him in terms of, you know, why is he keeping. I mean, it's like something out of the Island of Dr. Moreau. What's the deal with a caged animal? I'm pretty sure that's not allowed by Starfleet Command. And I think the engineer makes some comment about he's a warmonger, and the show takes steps to establish that he's not trustworthy in some way, and certainly casting Jason Isaacs doesn't help. Because usually Jason Isaacs is not. He's shady. It's kind of like Christopher Walken. It's like a giveaway. It's like, wait a minute.
Before we knew about the spore drives, you know, Jason Isaacs played Captain Hook in a remake of Peter Pan that came out a few years ago. Like maybe it was probably
Pan, right?
No, he was in the.
Oh no, he was in which one?
I think it was called Peter Pan.
Oh right. It was Peter. Right. Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. Anyways, but I thought because of the way the special effects look, I was like, well, maybe the Discovery flies on pixie dust.
Works for me.
What did you think of the other characters we were introduced to in the episode, and who stood out to you? And do you have enough information to have a favorite yet, or anything like that?
Well, I'm intrigued by the captain, by Lorca. Is it Lorca?
Yeah, Gabriel Lorca, named after a writer, a poet, if I'm not mistaken.
Gabriel Garcia Lorca, perhaps?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Was it? Isn't it? Yeah.
He's a Spanish writer. I think he does magical realism, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe that's Gabriel Garcia. No, that must be somebody else.
I think the Gabriel Lorca. Hold on.
Oh, maybe I've got him confused.
I think you have Marquez, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, mixed with.
Oh, with somebody else.
Yeah, this is a poet, if I'm not. Yeah, Gabriel Lorca.
Gabriel Lorca
is a poet and
Spanish poet, right?
Yep.
Well, he's intriguing, and I guess the idea of sort of like an evil captain who possibly has been given a lot of leeway.
How evil could he be if he's a Starfleet captain? I mean, there's a checks and balances system.
But doesn't it seem like he's overturning?
There is a lot of. Yeah, it's true. Although he's supposedly given unilateral carte blanche, right? Somehow the war, he's using some kind of like regulation in the war. And this is actually, as we go on, I'm a little ahead of you. So as we go on, there's a couple of more answers to this question that we'll get. But for the time being,
is he evil? Do you get a sense that he's evil, or not evil, but like, I don't know, just he's got a darker agenda than most captains?
I was thinking about this and I was like wondering, okay, so does he fit the mold of a Starfleet captain? And, you know, an interesting something interesting about having the show from the perspective of Michael Burnham is that we actually kind of see him. We have very limited information on anyone, and it's all based on kind of like what Michael gleans, or there's very few scenes until a future episode, but there's very few scenes where you have just him, where we explore him at this point. So I definitely think that the show did a good job of like portraying him as suspicious, because she's suspicious of him. It's very obvious that she thinks he's up to no good. Do I think he's up to no good? I think so. But do I think he's up to no good for the I think his heart's in the right place is what I'll say. I do think that
But he's up to no good. He's keeping a caged animal and it's suspicious. I mean, that animal is a sentient. I mean, we don't know. We don't know, but it seems
there's indicators later on that it is sentient, actually. So,
yes. I mean, I figured it was.
Yeah.
And because he makes a judgment. I don't know. I don't know. But it's obvious. It reminded me of the scene where actually a lot of it kind of reminded me of Alien Resurrection. This is a really weird movie to pull out at this moment, but the breathalyzer thing, that's an Alien Resurrection. That's how they would. Yeah, that's the first time I saw it in a sci-fi movie, and I thought it was kind of Alien Resurrection has it's made by a French director, so it has like a really kind of warped sense of humor, and it just seemed to me kind of jokey, like you'd breathe on it, so you're like and you'd open a door, and here we are on Discovery, and we're doing this. So I couldn't take it seriously, really.
And also, it seems like the hack was so obvious. Like when
it was really obvious.
Like when I'm not blaming the character. I'm just saying the people who created the security protocol like never thought that like could you just have picked it up from someone's even their spoon or fork or anything and just like faked, and what if you use breath mints, or what if you've
That's what I'm saying. In Alien Resurrection, it looked ridiculous, and it looked ridiculous here. And then there's a scene in Resurrection where Brad Dourif is kind of taunting the alien, and he kind of like does something up to the glass, and then the thing just goes there, And it reminded me of that scene at the end where the creature just like to the thing.
What did you think of Captain Lorca's introduction scene? What did you think of him? Like what we find out about him as a character, and like, do you think? I don't know. What did you think of the standing desk, his ready room, which has nothing in it except a tribble and a bowl of fortune cookies?
Yeah, that seems kind of. I think it. I don't know. It really calls attention to itself. I mean,
what famous ship captain? With Kirk, it's Horatio Hornblower. That we're getting. What famous literary ship captain comes to mind with Captain Lorca? Is it Ahab?
Well, I haven't seen him obsessed about anything yet.
Right. Except for winning the war with the Klingons.
Right. Yeah. Right, but that could be. I mean, honestly, it seemed to me like, and the fact that he's on a science vessel, I thought of Dr. Moreau.
Right.
Really.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that.
The whole cabinet of curiosities that he's got there, and so I mean, does he dissect them himself? I mean, is that how he gets his jollies off? Is dissecting these things on his own? Like, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just it's a very creepy and unsettling scene at the end. And then what I did think, and a lot of people have made something of the way the characters speak. They're a little more. The language is saltier, shall we say?
It is indeed.
Of this show. And that's definitely something that is very different from all the previous Star Trek shows. But when the security officer when the chief of security welcomes the prisoners aboard. She's a little there's just a hint of something nasty there, that not unprofessional, I would say.
The
like
garbage.
I'm thinking the way she I don't know, it just didn't seem very Star Trek-ish, I guess. It was almost like, and I can't remember what it is. I mean, I know she calls them trash, and but just the way, it just didn't seem very, she went out of her way to make these little zingers, you know, and I was like, you know, she should have been like, just by the book, you know, just, okay, you know, this way. You know, Worf wouldn't do that.
Worf definitely wouldn't do that, but also it's in his character as a Klingon to be a lot more formal, I think. You know,
but it's not what we're used to on other, you know, I don't think Tuvok would have done it.
Well, I will say that was a little unsettling too, because we're not used to like the chief engineering being so argumentative with the captain as well. I mean, like, he openly calls him a warmonger. He argues with him. Stamets is one of the characters that stood out for me. I actually,
what's his name? Stamets?
Lieutenant Stamets, Paul Stamets, and he's named after
the engineer, right?
The engineer, and played by Anthony Rapp. Who?
Well, I felt for him, really.
Yeah,
because
he's actually a very Starfleet type of character, if you think about it.
Yeah, he seems like somebody very
scientist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, put into a almost non-Starfleet situation with this kind of weird captain who's making kind of questionable decisions. Because I mean, I'm putting myself in his place. Okay, the chick who's like responsible for this war, the mutineer, is on my engineering project. What? Like, I'd be pissed too.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, definitely, and he's very careful. Like, he doesn't, you know, he doesn't want to, like, basically, like in that one scene, it's established where his colleague on the Glen is like, oh, we're gonna, you know, I don't know what the terminology, the technobabble means yet, but the implication is like that the Glen has jumped all the way to the Beta Quadrant, and, you know, like these great distances, and yet the Discovery has only been able to jump small distance, you know, short distance,
kilometers
or something like that. And so something that the Glen, and they call it a hack, I think they call it a hack to the navigational system. So the Glen is obviously, like, their captain must be even more insane than Captain Lorca. And I have to give Captain Lorca a little bit of credit, because his command style might be very, like, authoritarian. He even states in that one scene, this is not a democracy, right? Like,
which it isn't. It's true. It's not.
It's true. It's not. But at the same time, he does make some concessions. Like, he does say, I understand that your friend just died today, but you need to, like, realize that I have to let you do this. And the very fact that the crew feels like they can argue with him. Do you know what I mean? Like, Stamets can have that argument. Like, Stamets openly is like, well, the boring science stuff. Like, he's sarcastic with Lorca. It shows something about Lorca's character and his perspective, because Lorca's not concerned with all the what people think of him, basically. I guess that's the part that comes across as unsettling, or perhaps shady, or could be misconstrued as shady, is that, like, he's really not at all interested in what people think of him. He's gonna get the job done no matter what, and his crew doesn't seem to like him 100%.
Well, I didn't get a real, I mean, aside from the engineer, I didn't see anybody else's real reaction to him.
Saru says something along the lines of, like, Captain Lorca is not afraid of what other people are, you know, doesn't fear what others fear.
Oh yeah, what others fear, right?
You know, it's just kind of like a weird aside, and I don't know. It was just, I guess, again, I have a little foreknowledge, but like, you haven't gotten there yet. But we'll go into that.
It's all right. It's fine. You can. I don't mind spoilers.
I know, but I want you to see it.
Should we have announced that there's spoilers on this?
Oh yeah, sorry. Oh, I'll put it in the description. But this is okay. If you made it to this far without realizing,
we've spoiled everything for you anyways. We apologize.
We have to start being better about doing the disclaimer at the beginning. Our Star Trek Discovery discussions are completely unhindered, and are unhinged. Like Captain Lorca, and we are spoilerific on it. So please go watch the episode and then come back and listen to the rest of this. What did you think of the scene introducing Cadet Tilly? And what do you think of Tilly's character?
Tilly's the redhead?
Yes, the redhead.
She's annoying as hell.
What did you find annoying about her?
Everything.
I think that's intentional, though. She's supposed to be an
well, no, it is. It obviously
she's even self-aware.
Right. I thought she was. Yeah, she was. I was getting. I mean, I don't have a fast forward button, but I was like, okay, yeah, let's just whatever.
There's not a fast forward button on CBS All
No,
Access?
but I mean, like, I'm imagining I have a remote. I mean,
yes, of course.
But no, I didn't. I mean, you know, I know the character arc she's going to take, but already, I mean, whatever. She's kind of, I guess, she's a type of character that I don't think, you know, I can't imagine that type of character on another Star Trek. Well, maybe DS9, but
I thought Barclay. I
Barclay,
think Tilly kind of follows.
As a regular, can you imagine Barclay as a regular? Somebody would have thrown him off the ship. Yeah, she's kind of Barclay, the next generation.
A lot of people are speculating that her character is going to be one of the first characters that openly addresses autism on somewhere on the autism spectrum, or possibly Asperger's. Do you think that her characteristics are, now you've stated before that you've worked with students that are on the spectrum somewhere. Do you recognize any kinds of autistic or autism type characteristics in her?
I don't know. She seemed
I didn't think of her as autistic.
I didn't really think of that really. I just thought she just seemed kind of comical to me. I mean, in the heat of the moment, like, you know, she's the one that ends up saying, "You in the shadows, come out."
Yeah, she jumps right into her.
So she jumps right into it, and
let's talk about that scene, shall we? So we have we have this really interesting thing happening. One, I realize that the engineering section is shielded and you can't transport into engineering. However, couldn't you transport just, I mean, later on they transport the creature off of the ship, right? So couldn't you have transported your crew onto somewhere on the Discovery and walked to engineering? And then that way you could also have just easily have escaped engineering and then been transported off of the ship as well, instead of having, which was a cool scene, don't get me wrong. Like, I like the whole, you know, shuttlecraft scene and things like that. But was this something that was obviously written to be cool, or do you think that it was something there wasn't really like a science reason behind it? No.
And also, you know, for a science vessel, I would imagine they have like sensors up the wazoo, and they didn't detect that beast,
right?
I mean, they're obviously it must have done a scan if there are any life forms left. You know,
and they didn't detect
that there's like this gigantic,
or a Klingon life sign for that matter, which the sensors definitely have the ability to pick up. I'm sure,
right?
You know, I mean, like, you could do that on Enterprise. You could distinguish life forms. Different kinds of,
I feel like the surprise that they had when they boarded the ship was I mean, I feel like even on Enterprise, the show, they would have been able to have detected. I mean, I know they've detected the difference between Vulcans and humans.
Well, and that's
on the show, so they can certainly detect.
And they do certainly make it a point to say that the Suliban warriors are undetectable to sensors, which gives them an advantage. So we, again, no note that there's a Klingon walking around on the ship. Like, they didn't do any of their due diligence. That seems like pretty standard procedure when you're boarding a ship, whether you're in the Star Trek universe or, you know, Serenity or whatever. It just
Stargate or whatever.
It's not like something. This is just like standard science fiction 101.
It's a trope, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So what about that raises another question. Maybe you have a logical answer for this, but what about the fact that there's Klingons on board the ship? They point out that the Klingons came aboard after, while the Glenn was adrift, right? But wouldn't there be a Klingon ship within visual range of the Glenn?
I would think.
And why would this Klingon not have called for reinforcements or even transported back to his ship? Or, I don't know. It just, or do they have patrols that maybe are only shuttlecrafts or something like that? And why wasn't it in the landing? Why wasn't it also in the docking bay? So where was that? And and again, they have their tricorders even, and they couldn't detect Klingon life signs when they were even on board. Like, Tilly had to ask that Klingon to move out of the shadows. Well, I mean, like, sir, there's a Klingon in the shadows. I mean, so what is that? Is it a plot hole? Is it bad writing? Is it, or lazy writing? What do you think? I'm gonna say lazy writing.
I think writing Star Trek is its own subgenre. I think you could say. There's certain things that one expects from a Star Trek story. Like, for example, okay, we were just complaining about, well, why didn't they pick up the big behemoth, whatever they found in there? I feel like on DS9 or Next Generation, they would have just been a quick line like, Captain, our sensors can't penetrate the hull for some reason, and Data would be like, blah, 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 or whatever. But it would have been, okay, well, I guess we got to beam over, and we don't know what we're going to find because we can't.
So that little piece was missing.
The technobabble, which I think would have been second nature to writers who are experienced in writing Star Trek. I mean, this is a new show. I don't think anybody there is really experienced, and I don't think any of them have written previous Star Trek shows. So maybe, they're just kind of.
We'll have to take time in a future episode to maybe highlight some of the writers, and we'll try to be ourselves, being having backgrounds of writing. We'll be very sensitive, and we apologize if we sound like we're being like, oh, you didn't do your job, but we have these questions, and I don't have an answer for that one. What did you think of the engine room on the Discovery? The sets. Let's talk about the sets for a little while. Because I mean, the Shanzhou is one thing. We didn't really get a lot to look at on that ship, but this is the ship we're going to live on for the rest of the series, supposedly. So yeah, let's talk about those sets. What did you think of?
It's really dark.
Everything's really dark. It's
Is that because the captain? Can you explain? What was the thing with his eyes?
I don't know if they fully explained it yet. I don't know.
But did he say that he had some injury?
Some sort of battle damage that occurred, which his eyes have to adjust very slowly. So like light changes have to be slow. They can't.
So this entire ship has to rearrange.
I wouldn't. Well, you know what?
One thing that I found kind of
captain's
odd,
prerogative, right?
But this entire ship has to adjust to this one guy's eye problem, and then when Barclay's daughter or whatever comes in and says, "Oh no, I need to."
Be his grandmother, by the way. It would
his
be
grandmother. Sorry,
grandmother, right? Yeah.
Barclay's grandmother comes in and says, "Oh, I need to sleep on that cot because that's the one that doesn't have polyester because of my." Allergies, specific allergies or whatever. I'm like, God, everything on this ship is like so custom to everybody. I'm like, wow. Like on the original show, you just slept on a freaking bunk, man. And, it was like 4 to a bunk. And I just don't understand the
scientists.
Those things would.
I think scientists. It's true. We can maybe write this off as like scientists are very quirky, so maybe science vessels are a little more accommodating than, let's say, your standard exploration vessel or or
I don't
constitute.
know.
Yeah, who knows?
I don't know.
But I did like that the engine was period accurate. Updated, of
Yeah,
course. It was
yeah.
updated, of course, but it wasn't our column. It wasn't the column that we
Right. It
see.
was the.
It was this deep, like sort of, yeah.
I dig that. I like that. I
And
thought that was
it
cool.
had a red glow, kind of like, again, which the original series had kind of an orange glow, but whatever. I mean, who cares about the glow color? But again, it was like this core, that it looked like a different thing. And you even see in one of the scenes like a little bit of electricity, like,
Oh, I didn't notice that.
yeah, very cool stuff. What do you think of the design of the Discovery overall? Like, what do you think it kind of
The exterior?
Mhm.
Well, that was based on one of the Ralph McQuarrie
Right.
redesigns for the Enterprise, I guess, for the motion picture, was it, or for the
Yeah, I
show,
think it was for the
or
show.
for the motion picture?
Phase 2. It was going to be for
It was
phase.
for phase 2.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, I might be mistaken though.
Okay.
How about the bridge? What about the Discovery's bridge?
It's big.
It is really big.
It's big. Well, I mean, I've told you off camera that I'm in the midst of reading the novel that is supposed to. It was the first tie-in novel that has Captain Pike's Enterprise, as we've seen in the pilot, meet
The Shunzo.
the Shunzo. And the Shunzo definitely matches the look and style of the updated look and styling of the Discovery. So I don't know, man. I don't know how they expect us to mash this together. It's some interest. I just want to personally say to David Mack, wow, man, you've got a tough one there, and my heart goes out to you to try to square that. But the look of the Discovery in terms of the interiors, I mean, it wouldn't be out of place in the Kelvin
Timeline.
Star Trek. I find it a hard thing to imagine that this ship exists
Alongside
the Constitution class Enterprise commanded by Captain Pike.
Concur. I agree with you on that one.
I didn't really get a good view of the bridge.
Well, no, that's another
in that episode.
That's another critique. The show doesn't really personal critique.
Beauty shot of Pike.
Well, yeah, there's not anything like that of anything. I mean, you get that nice shot of the Discovery when it tractor beams the shuttle, which you get a nice which was cool.
Which was cool.
It was a cool shot, and I did like the handoff. You could see clearly the beams changing from one set of emitters to another another. I think it does 3 emitters. We passed through 3 different sets of emitters. Ship. Yeah, she's a big ship, but like it was neat to see that because it started out with the front emitter, the forward emitters, and then it moved it to the back emitters, and it's like a neat shot. The shuttlecraft, I didn't like it in my first viewing, but this viewing I looked at it a little more, and actually it has the red bizarre ram scoops in the front, and it kind of fits the era a little bit. Like it does have enough of a. It looks more like the Star Trek movie motion
called
picture
it.
era.
It's
the Star Trek 5 kind of. Yeah, the back.
Star Trek 5 shuttlecraft.
Yeah, it looks like Star Trek 5 shuttlecraft.
Which I love the look. Don't get me wrong.
but it's
like the wrong look.
It's like we talked about how the Red Alert, the Daft Punk robot on the Shunzo was displaying the Red Alert symbol, and it was the symbol from the.
She's not a robot, by the way.
Daft Punk
in the book, it explains she's not a robot.
What is? It's a she. First of all,
it's a she, and she. That's for navigation. She can take that off. That's for flying the ship. I'm sorry, I stopped the show.
I love it. I thought she was the ship's DJ.
No, she's not the ship's DJ.
What?
No, she is like she's a navigator of some kind.
Do you happen to remember her name?
Oh, I'd have to. Oh crap. I'll have it for the next one. I promise. I don't have the. No, I
So
don't
we
have
talked
the.
about the engine room. We talked about the bridge. We talked about Captain Lorca's command style. Um, oh, we talked about the Klingons aboard the Glen. What else is there to talk about in this episode? Oh, I have a question for you.
Mhm.
Spore drive.
Yeah,
Intrigue,
that's no. I'm not
intriguing.
intrigued at all. No, not at all. I think it's stupid.
What's stupid about it?
Um, it sounds stupid for one thing, and the explanation that Lorca gave was. I mean, it sounds like something that I'd accept it on Doctor Who, but it doesn't pass the Star Trek test for me. I would have liked to have had a little more explanation of that. And then we were saying how whatever whatever my opinion of the spore drive is, the fact of the matter is that this technology hits a dead end because we don't see this in any subsequent. I mean,
Well,
even if
one
this
can't.
is Kelvin universe, which I feel it is, they don't use the spore drive in the movies. So this goes nowhere, the spore drive thing. So what did you say?
I just. What did I say about it?
It was I forget, but you
Well,
you hit it.
I made a lot of comments, and I think one of my comments, which I'm going to reiterate right now, is that I think the writers are on mushrooms because they're sniffing some spores, but,
Yeah, right.
no, but seriously, um, it's called the dash drive, and it stands for what is it? Oh gosh, it's got a name. It's like the displacement something spore hub drive. Something I forgot what it was. Anyways, but let's talk about the Alice in Wonderland thing a little bit because they seem to be heavy on the Alice in Wonderland. Captain Lorca, could he be the Mad Hatter?
Oh wow.
And let's talk
Could
about
he?
the spores. I mean, think about it for a second. Like, spores, mushrooms, right? Like
That
this
evokes Alice in
evokes
Wonderland
Alice
for
in
sure.
Wonderland. We
Yeah.
have this idea of going down the rabbit hole presented. The opening shot of the whole series is us going down a rabbit hole in space, so to speak. Do you remember that opening shot where it
Yes.
becomes Takuvma's eye, right? So
Right.
what maybe we're on a journey through the rabbit hole. What I don't know what the end is yet, and that's the thing is we have to kind of ride the ride all the way to the end to see it, right? But there's a lot of things that kind of don't make sense with Star Trek, with Starfleet, with Klingons. The Klingons don't make sense, even with the redesign, whether you like it or not. There's just something. It feels like there's something intentionally odd and weird, and intentionally, the writers are intentionally trying to like push some buttons here. And I wonder if instead of getting upset or like, oh, that's not Star Trek or that's not how Star Trek's supposed to be, that if our minds instead said, well, why these writers that claim to be huge fans of the show and love the show,
Mhm.
then if it's not a mistake and it's intentional, then why are they doing it? And that's the real question that I have, which is where is this going? And it's kind of fun to kind of see where it's going. Now, my patience is tried. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm just like, no, that doesn't look like it's supposed to, or whatever. But at the same time, the producers and writers are saying, hey guys, like when something's not continuity, accurate, there's a reason for it. Stick with it. You'll see where we're going. And there's even shots that like kind of suggest there's dream, well, in the opening two episodes, Burnham seems to go, is she Alice? And what's the wonderland that she's going into? What is this wonderland? Like, where is she? Is she lost in space and time, so to speak? Is she lost in another dimension, so to speak? And are we following her journey as she continues to spiral down this proverbial rabbit hole into Wonderland?
I I don't think that, considering the way the show's being promoted, considering the fact that you've got these tie-in novels, especially this one that I'm reading right now, where you're actually
That goes out of the way to like.
goes out of the way to have her meet Spock, as a matter of fact, in the novel.
But it doesn't mean that Spock doesn't exist. I mean, it doesn't mean that Spock
No, I
doesn't
know,
exist. But yeah,
I know, but Alice in Wonderland, for Alice in Wonderland to work, it has to be told from her point of view, because it's I don't know. I think they're going out of their way to integrate Discovery into what's already known as Star Trek. If they were going to produce something that was going to be somehow, oh wait, guess what? It's alternate, or it's a dream, or any kind of avenue like that, I don't think it would have been such. I don't think they would have invested so much time in associating this show with everything else that is canon. I think they would have just sort of said, "Hey, this is the new Star Trek. Give it a try," and at the end, they'd be like, "Gotcha."
Well, yeah, but where is the show going? That's the question.
Well, I mean, going back to your Spore question, that obviously goes nowhere.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, I don't know. The thing with prequels is the success. I think success is determined if you can somehow have an excuse for, okay, why are we going back? Okay, to show how this happened, to show how that happened. I think that's why Enterprise, the series, was so good. They went out of their way to create a look and aesthetic on that show that made you believe it could take place before the original show, in my opinion.
Plus, they set it far back enough where they had, I think,
right,
the liberty to do things that
right
wouldn't interfere with the shows to come.
Right, but aesthetically, you can believe that show existed before Kirk.
Yeah, we did an example where we showed the NX next to the Connie, and it was a very
in terms of the tech and everything, and then also in terms of the content of the stories, you could see them kind of laying down groundwork for what you'll see later on in the original show, and little hints and little things like that. With Discovery, I haven't seen that yet. I haven't seen them laying seeds for anything. What I've seen them is, I don't want to call them invasions of the past, but or retconnings of the past, but I see them, instead of laying groundwork, like saying, hey, this is where this came from, this is where that came from, I see them saying, oh, guess what? Sarek has an adopted daughter. Or, hey, guess what? They were using spore drives in this era. What does this have to do? What? So it just I don't know.
We're all waiting to see why these characters are never again important. Like, the show is introducing all these great characters only to essentially say that, well, the reason why they're not in any of the other Star Trek series or mentioned or even, referenced is because they don't do anything important enough to be mentioned, or, it's like, to your point, it would have been interesting if Star Trek Discovery was a show about Garth of Izar.
There we go.
Let's say, or some character that, again, that the only seeming tie that they have to the subsequent shows is this relationship between the main character and her stepfather, her adopted father. So it's like, oh, okay, there's a tie-in. Burnham is Spock's adopted sister. Well, he never mentioned her before. Okay, fine. He never mentioned Cybok either, but but like, why is she? Who is she? Why isn't she ever mentioned anywhere else? She's never mentioned as the first mutant. It'd have been neat if they mentioned in an episode of Star Trek, oh, we like, don't be like Michael Burnham, the first mutineer, you know. And imagine if someone, we all assume Michael was a man, and then it's cool because we see the story and then we find out, oh, Michael was actually a woman, you know. Would have been a neat little twist. But there's no mention of Discovery really of significance. There's no mention of the Shenzhou. There's no mention of this war, as far as I know. There was a Klingon war.
Yes, there was.
There was one. Okay, so the war is canon.
Yes.
So, well, maybe that's the tie-in then. Now we know how the war started.
Well, okay, but beyond that, I mean, but then I say, okay, you're gonna go, but then you're gonna give us Klingons that we don't recognize.
Yeah, they look like remnants to me, to be honest.
So that kind of takes you out of it.
Memory Alpha says that the Federation Klingon War took place in 2267, so it's actually like 9 years after Star Trek Discovery. So that's already been rewritten. Here, I'll just read from the article. It says the Federation War of 2267 was a brief conflict fought between the United Federation of Planets and the Klingon Empire in 2267. It was a result of years of tense buildup in Cold War situation, but was ultimately inconclusive because the fighting was abruptly ended by the Organians. That's right. So that's the only mention of war. Is there a historic war? Let's see here.
Well, they'd had a war, because obviously once, you know, in the original show, obviously they were at you know, they were enemies. They were bitter enemies. So, but
oh, here we go. Federation Wars. So there's the Klingon War of 2256, which is updated because of Star Trek Discovery. But before that, there was no war. Hold on, let's find out. Yeah. The 2256 war, this is the very first mention of it, is Star Trek Discovery. Let's see. The Federation Klingon War of 2256 was a conflict fought between the United Federation of Planets and the Klingon Empire that began in 2256 with the Battle of the Binary Stars. So I remembered, like, in Star Trek, there had been no actual war between the Klingons and the Federation. I don't think until DS9 we really had a war. Which, by the way, placing the show post Star Trek The Next Generation would have been great, because heck, the Klingons are, you know, finally that Cold War's over. Because even in Next Generation, the peace between the Klingons and the Federation post Star Trek 6 isn't exactly like a perfect peace. The Klingons and the Federation work together, but it's well established in TNG that Worf is the very first Klingon serving aboard a Federation ship. They work together, but they don't work side by side in that way until TNG. And he seems to be a unique situation, other than these exchange programs, like that episode where Riker goes aboard the Klingon ship, you know? So I don't know. I don't remember a war. There was mention of Axanar for sure, like battles or conflicts, but nothing like what we're seeing in Discovery. I mean, like, it's a full-scale war that they're talking about. And so by the time of the original series, I guess it is a gray area, because some of us thought that there was a war, but there really wasn't one, apparently, according to scripture, as it were. We'd love to hear your thoughts, because, you know, we're not experts here. So audience, chime in. Is there anything more to discuss about Context is for Kings? Oh yeah, I guess what about that ending with the after the sport drive, Captain Lorca gives her kind of the speech. He's like, you helped start this war, help me end it. Is that compelling? Do you think she made the right decision? Would you have made the same decision?
Well, yeah. I mean, for her, obviously, it's a
chance at redemption.
It's a chance at redemption. You know, I'm still trying to figure out Burnham. You know, I'm still trying to figure out, you know, for someone who was raised a Vulcan, she has some surprisingly un-Vulcan-like,
Well, yeah,
you know,
I think she has
reactions to
this.
things.
I think it's a very interesting thing because it's like when you admire a culture, you try to adapt their characteristics, and you can definitely see Burnham has this veneer of volcanism where she tries to be this like more Vulcan than human type character, but her human side is so strong that it breaks through.
Well, she is human, yeah.
uh, it breaks through completely in a way that I don't think she's even conscious of or aware of. And I think it's hindering her character in a lot of ways from progressing. Well, obviously we see what it did to her. I mean, you haven't seen the Battle of the Binary Stars, but when you do, we can talk about this further. She seems unhinged. Like she seems like not in her right mind at all. Like it's a very odd decision that she makes, and it's very unsettling as well. And here there's there's no real example of that in this episode, but we do see, I think, Burnham again. She makes that weird call about the biological warfare where she just like is convinced that her assumption is correct. And I think that's something that like she has, that's her human side is like tampering with her logic and her training as a Vulcan, among Vulcans rather, I should say. So yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's interesting enough to follow. I do have to give Discovery the credit that the characters are very interesting, and I do like, especially Stamets is intriguing to me. Lorca is very intriguing to me, and so is Burnham. I think it's as much as cool as the first two episodes were visually, and as great as Michelle Yeoh is. I do think it's a waste of two episodes to have had her something that could have been done in a prologue or in flashbacks. It's not till the third episode that we get her on board Discovery, and while that's cool in its own sense, where we had to wait for this, in another sense, we only have 18 episodes, 14 episodes, 15 episodes in a season. And so I'm a little like, oh, well, we could have had more, but we'll see. The show might be satisfying. We have a few episodes to go yet. I'll go ahead and give the first rating, Doctor. For this episode, I'm going to give it a 6.5 because there were a lot of interesting things, but there were too many questions that I had, and I thought that the writing was maybe a little bit lazy at times, especially with the investigation aboard the Glen and the Klingons that came from nowhere, and all the other things that we talked about.
I'll go with that with a 5. I think.
Wow.
I mean, a 5 is just straight down the middle. Just because we're using 1 through 10, right?
Right, 1 through 10.
Okay, just like okay. I don't know if do the spores affect the rating? I don't know.
Ooh, we should give them spore. What were they calling them? Spiral? I forget what it was. The term in the show.
I think this show has a lot that we have to. If anything, this show is challenging our comfort with Star Trek. When we watch a show or a Star Trek show, there's certain things that we've come to expect. And I think this show is definitely challenging those things. We're seeing things that we don't usually get. We're not seeing some of the things that we're used to. So it's I think in a way, perhaps we're Alice.
Oh,
and
very nice.
We have found ourselves in this, through this rabbit hole into this wonderland called Discovery, and we're the ones that are kind of trying to figure out, well, which way is up and which way is down. And
nice tie-in to this episode and the speech that Burnham gives. Yes,
right at the end.
Very nice. Huh.
So
sometimes when you feel lost, as we do, you're actually found.
Right. So perhaps that that's what's going on there. I know we're trying to wrap it up, but I thought it was curious that Barclay's grandmother was shocked by the sight of a book.
That was strange.
Which
too, yeah.
really was odd to me because I think, I mean, in the original series they had books. I don't know. That actually just that was one of the most disturbing things out of the whole show is, I mean, I work in a library, so I should be disturbed. I don't want to see the e-reader, eliminate the book completely. So I don't know. I just thought that was kind of odd. Why would especially, I don't know. It just seemed a really weird reaction, and I give it a 5.
I will say that the depiction of a book being a rarity and with where we seem to actually be heading as a society, but I've always liked that Star Trek did have books in it because it showed that there was an intentional preservation of this antiquated technology, because there is nothing like that tactile experience of reading a book. There's nothing like it. I mean, I'm a big proponent. I have a Kindle. I love to read
Me too.
in a digital format, and it's very convenient. You can carry 100 books with you wherever you go.
Yep.
Which you can't do. Yet I do go out of my way to own books and to keep books and to keep them with me. And I think that I've noticed that even, we often, people of our generation are very critical of millennials, but I have friends who are much younger than I am, in their early 20s, and I've been to their homes, and guess what they have? Bookshelves with books on them, So I don't think it is something that's going to fade away. It's going to change. Our relationships with books are changing. They're not the only resource for knowledge as they once were, or one of the most, because a book can't be updated when wrong information has been corrected. You know what I mean? Like you have to get the revised edition. And what if you didn't know there was a revised edition? Then you've now read. What was that? You all right?
That's Emma.
Oh, it's the red alert. But I see what you're saying, and I do think that that's an interesting thing to keep talking about.
Hey, babe, could you hold on a minute?
We're signing off.
one moment. We're signing off.
All right, Doctor.
All right.
Live long and prosper, and we'll see you next.
Live long and prosper, sir.
Thank you for joining me.
And Emma says hi.
Hi, Emma.
She can't hear you, but
all right. Goodbye.
But I'll tell her that you said hi.
See you
all
next
right,
time.
sir. All right.